happens. I mean, one of the things about this weekend is we're going to see a lot of different people trying new things. Now, if it was me, I'd be slinging up the red cards. James Reed here is also kind of trying to do something a little classic. He's trying to do some Jund here on us. He's got the green, red, black combination, mid-range cards. He's got a little bit of mana acceleration from Sylvan Caryatid. And Sylvan Caryatid, it's not Farseek, but it seems to be the format's version of Farseek. Opening of this game, we have a creature killed by shock, and turn 2. Is that the Lord?
That is the Murder King.
Murder
It's Timer
King,
at the Murder King is where he is going to begin.
Red-black to get a 2/2.
Yeah, I mean, that's where he's starting here. We'll take a look at his deck as we do go here. But you see Rill is just starting off with a Temple. And we can talk about his deck list a little bit here and see, it looks like it's a little more aggressive because it has Cackler in it.
Well, I mean, we've got Cackler, we've got Niv-Magus Elemental, we've got Akram Crusader. That's a lot of very cheap creatures to drop down. Niv-Magus Elemental is a card that ended up getting talked about a little bit as a possible legacy solution to cards like Nimble Mongoose for the poor red-blue Delver. But we see them here for Eric Rill as a part of a very cheap initial package that he finishes up the curve with on Young Pyromancer. And then after that, the entire rest of his deck is just cheap instants and sorceries to try to make advantage of the Pyromancer. But look at this. Even though Eric Rill's deck is a Grixis Pyromancer deck, his opponent also has Pyromancer. So we've got a Murder King and a Young Pyromancer. Now, it looks like we have Mutavault joining the Murder King over there, and in comes Rakdos Cackler for 2. This puts Ian down to 18. I believe that's the first damage that he's taken this game.
And you saw we updated the names there. We actually have Ian Losch playing Black-Red Pyromancer. James, the other playing Jund, is in our backup feature match, so we do apologize for the confusion there. But let's take a look at the Black-Red Pyromancer deck list here. You see Temerat the Murder King on the screen. You also do see Young Pyromancer. He is basically a Pyromancer deck. He's got a ton of spells in his deck. Shock, Molten Rebirth, Lightning Strike, Dreadboards, Magma Jet, and a Singleton, Flames of the Firebrand. So he has really built his deck around Young Pyromancer, Oof. And I think Rill realizes that, and he's going to take out the other Young Pyromancer with a Shock and get an Elemental token.
That's right. The first advantage here for our Pyromancers. Ian unable to take advantage of his own Pyromancer in order to get his Elemental. Here we see a Elemental token, and one of the things I like to think about whenever I see tokens now is who could that token be if you were the Invitational Champion coming up in not so long.
You see Losch has I think he has a Chandra Pyromaster in his hand.
I think you're right. 4 mana would be good evidence for that. Here it is. I believe the Pyromancer would be an excellent target, but he could also do other things. Boom. There it goes. 1 damage to the head as well. Chandra does not discriminate. She'll hit planeswalkers, as in you, and creatures with equal fervor.
Now, this is a card that's going to get talked a lot about over the course of the weekend as we do dissect the different versions that you can play of Mono Red. Again, you saw Turtenwald's version last weekend that did not have Chandra in it, but you also saw Bertioli's version that did have a couple Pyromasters in it. And then, there are the bigger Boros or bigger red type decks that are actually kind of built around Chandra. But then additionally, you just kind of see Chandra just hanging out in, multicolor strategies like blue, white, red, or maybe Grixis Super Friends, stuff like that. So a lot of talk about this card.
I mean, I think when we see Grixis Super Friends come around, Chandra is going to be a huge part of it just because, Jace is great for card advantage, but Chandra can do a similar kind of thing, get you up on those cards, as well as actually just kill something.
Yeah.
And
I think that's hidden.
Ordeal of Thassa.
Okay, so he has Ordeals in his deck. All right, keep me guessing, Eric.
Okay, Ordeal of Thassa is interesting. It's a new card from Theros. One of the many ways you can make your creatures heroic is by enchanting them. All of the Ordeals basically work the same way. Your enchanted creature, if you attack with it, gets a +1/+1 counter on it, and if a third counter gets on it, then the Ordeal is triggered. In this case, for Thassa's Ordeal, that will be drawing 2 cards. But you can see the Rakdos Cackler is currently a 3/3 now because of Ordeal of Thassa.
And what I like about Eric Rill's deck, Eric in general, is that, I mean, we're at the beginning of a format. It'd be very easy for him to just do a revelation deck or something like that, but he's brewing. He's trying some new things out. I mean, Ordeal of Thassa is not a card that was, you know, in the limelight at all last weekend or in general when people are going over spoilers. So I like people giving things a try and saying, you know, is this card legitimate?
I mean, one of the worst things you can do when you're doing a new format is just follow the leader.
Plus, with Cackler starting off with a counter already, too, makes it so that it's actually easier to break the Ordeal, to be able to draw the two cards.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if Ordeal of Thassa is better than Ordeal of Porphyros or one of the other Ordeals that Eric can play. But either way, I think Lightning Strike's going to take that down.
Yeah, he also has Niv Magus Elemental for the fast Ordeal.
Okay, okay. Murder King comes across for 2. That's another kind of interesting card, too. You see in Losch's hand, he has a Dreadbore and a Shock. You know, 2 cards that are pretty well known and going to see a lot of play over the course of the next year. Temperate the Murder King, though, it reminds me of like a couple different cards, like, you know, a Pyre Zombie type card, or, you know, in a way a Hammer of Bogarden type card. You know, not the exact same parallel, but we've seen cards like this before. I don't think it's of the power level of Pyre Zombie, but Pyre Zombie is a lot more mana intensive, where I don't think this one really is. You see Amizian Mortars taking it down. What do you think about this card, the Murder King?
The Murder King, I think one of the things I don't like about the Murder King is he can't sacrifice itself.
Okay.
And you know what I really want to do is I really want him to be able to say, no, I'll, you know, suicide myself rather than let you kill me. But despite that, it's a solid creature. The thing that you need is you need something to sacrifice in order to get it back. And I guess in the case of a young Pyromancer deck, you'll have the Elementals. But I'm not super excited about it. Okay, we see the 0 effect here for Chandra, revealing on top of the deck a Chandra's Phoenix. This is a great little combo, Chandra's Phoenix and Chandra. A little known fact on Chandra's Phoenix is that if you damage your opponent with a red Planeswalker, you also trigger the Chandra's Phoenix return from the grave. Doesn't happen very often, but now that Chandra Pyromaster is out there, I think it's something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of.
Yeah, most people are used to, you know, you shock them, you get your Phoenix back, you Lightning Strike them, what have you. But it does have that little bit of text that says Red Planeswalker. So with the Pyromaster or previously Chandra Firebrand, you could get this card back with the help of a red Planeswalker and get the Phoenix back. You see the Phoenix is going to untap. Shock going to come off the top here for Losch from Chandra's 0 ability yet again. And the 0 ability on this card, this is what I think, you know, this is obviously what makes the card as good as it is. The ultimate isn't something that's going to come into play a lot, and the +1 is, it's not irrelevant. But I think a lot of the time, especially when you get in a board position like this, you're just going to be zeroing it, and even if you hit a land, you're happy.
The 0 is one of those remarkably powerful abilities. I think that when we saw the Modern event a few weeks ago, I believe it was Reed Duke that had Chandra in his list, and it was very effective. Though I have to say, I was so impressed by Ben Stark's Harmonizes.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
You see, Rill is going to concede the game, as this is too much to deal with the Chandra and those burn spells and the Phoenix. So Losch is going to win game number 1 over the Star City Games Legacy Open champion in Cincinnati from a few weeks back. But it's only one game, and you know, you do play best out of 3, so the sideboard is going to be important. What does he have hiding out over there?
Well, I mean, one of the things he's going to have to reckon with is it's really clear that Ian Losch has a ton of removal, and that's a problem. So I think the things we might see are Chandra Pyromaster of his own in order to have a way to dodge that a little bit. It won't stop a Dreadbore, but it will make it harder for some of the other removal to be so problematic. Negate, I think, Dreadbores of his own for the opponent's Chandra. And after that, his opponent has a lot of non-basics, it looked like, but he has more. So even though he has Burning Earth in the board, I'm not 100% sure that that's where he's going to want to go. As I'm looking at it, I think he's going to bring in Negate, Chandra Pyromaster. He could bring in Triton Tactics as an anti-removal spell.
Okay.
Triton Tactics, if you don't know it, a very text-heavy blue card. The important part in this matchup will be the +0/+3 that it could give to 2 creatures. Duress actually seems like it would be very solid against so much removal.
Yeah,
he could clear the way.
We're looking at a deck here that's 22. Actually 25 spells. We're looking at Shocks, Molten Rebirths, Lightning Strikes, Dreadbores, Magma Jets, again, a single Flames of the Firebrand, and 3 Chandra Pyromasters. You take a look at Losch's sideboard here, 3 Peak Eruption. I think they're definitely going to come in here for him. The mountain count in Rill's deck, how many do we have there?
Let's see. a total of 11 mountains from Rill. 8 of them are dual land mountains, the Return to Ravnica, or if you prefer, the Ravnica dual lands.
Okay, so 3 peak eruptions are certainly going to be good. I think 2 Boros Reckoners are also going to be pretty good in this matchup. When you're playing against a deck that is base red, the removal oftentimes is going to be Lightning Strike or Shock or what have you. Yes, I think Rill does have access to Dreadbore and some other types of removal. We saw Mizium Mortars as well, so damage-based removal against Boros Reckoner, I think we all know by now, not the best way to go about killing that card. You see 2 Skull Cracks, a Rakdos Return, 3 Heroes Downfall, 3 Thoughtseize, and an additional Flames of the Firebrand. So he's got access to, unsurprisingly, a lot of spells in his young Pyromancer deck. Which spells does he want to bring in? Again, I like the peak eruptions a lot here. I like an actual creature in Boros Reckoner, but where you go from there is debatable. I mean, Hero's Downfall seems like it would be pretty good in this matchup. You have to believe that, looking at Rill's deck, he's 3 colors, and while he doesn't know the exact composition of the deck, does Losch, like we do here in the booth, I think Hero's Downfall is a nice hedge against, well, he's probably got creatures. I mean, we saw some, and he does have Order of Thassa to be at a little 2-for-1 action, but he's probably got access to some number of Planeswalkers. Yeah. I don't know which one, but Chandra's a pretty safe bet, and if you're Losch playing that game, you're like, I cast my own Chandra, I bet my opponent has those too.
I mean, it wouldn't be unsurprising, given that color combination, to see something like a Ral Zarek, and a Hero's Demise, or a Hero's Downfall, pardon me. It's one of those cards where if I see a creature enchantment, I might not be able to burn whatever it is out.
Sure.
And that card is just, Hero's Downfall does not care. As long as it's not a card like Blood Baron that has pro black, it just does not care. I don't care how big you are. You could be 12/12 for all I care.
Yeah.
One other card to note in Eric Rill's sideboard is Electrickery, and this is a very interesting possible choice, mostly because he did see a young Pyromancer come into play. And one of the things that young Pyromancers do is make lots of 1/1s, and one of the things that young Pyromancers are is an X1. They're a 2/1 creature. I wouldn't be surprised if he brought in the 1 Electrickery.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him bring it in either. The bad thing here for Eric is, again, if you take a look at Losch's deck list here, excuse me, Timerath the Murder King times 4, 3 Chandra Phoenix, 2 Stormbreath Dragons, 3 Porphyros, God of the Forge, 3 Chandra Pyromaster as far as creature/planeswalkers go. So the only thing that Electrickery is going to take out is the 4 copies of Young Pyromancer and the 3 copies of Molten Rebirth, the tokens that those make. So is that worth investing a slot into? I think there are certain draws that'll line up where Electrickery looks great. I think there'll be other draws where it looks pretty bad.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that ends up happening when you're sideboarding, and this has certainly happened to me, I see something in their deck, I sideboard in the answer, and you know what? They didn't really have much in their whole deck other than that little bit that I saw, and it ends up rotting dead. One of the things in the top 8, people will have perfect information. We do share the deck lists with the competitors. They get to look at each other's deck. But right now, they've got to make their best judgments with what they see, with what they know, and go forward and just try to do the best they can with much more imperfect information.
So we take a look at Rill's deck list here. Again, you mentioned Niv Magus Elemental times 4, 4 Rakdos Cackler, 4 Akroan Crusader, which we haven't seen yet. That's the new red 1-drop. And then 4 Young Pyromancer. So this is a very different deck. It's it's an aggressive deck. It's got Order of Thassa in it. It has Thoughtseize. It's very Delver-esque without having Delvers in them. What do you think of this tempo style deck that Rill is trying to work on right now? That's what it feels like to me.
I think that's what he's going for, with Thoughtseize taking the place of a card like whatever counterspell that you prefer to name, like say Mana Leak.
Sure.
But the thing is, Thoughtseize and Mana Leak are not the same thing. Thoughtseize does not waste your opponent's mana. Thoughtseize can take the best card, but the real power of those Delver decks was having your opponent do something and you saying no, and then their turn being done. A Thoughtseize doesn't cut it the same way. So honestly, I think that I'm not pumped about where this deck is going.
Okay.
So, what is possible, though, is that between Niv Magus Elemental and Ordeal of Thassa, that he could do a build-your-own big creature very quickly. And Hidden Strings, another card that we see in this deck that we'll bring up on the screen. If you didn't do a lot of drafting during the previous block, then you might not know it.
To be fair, if you did do a lot of drafting during the previous block, I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah,
know how many
hidden
times
strings.
I don't know how many times you were ciphering with hidden strings, but this is a cipher spell. Oddly
Yep.
enough, I'm trying to think of cipher spells that are actually seeing playing constructed right now. I don't think there are very
any.
many. This one, I mean, Rill's giving it a shot. And again, I like brewing at the beginning of the format, seeing if cards are good or bad, and seeing if old cards actually got better. You see, you may tap or untap target permanent, then you may tap or untap another target permanent. So it's this double twiddle effect, basically. The initial copy is going to be pretty good, and then you can force it through. Basically, you get to force through to make sure that you can cipher onto a guide. But how good is it after the initial one? Hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting. It would be way too powerful if it had like a frost breath-like effect. So they couldn't do that. But after that first hit, you have to work to get it to work again. So
yeah, and I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing. You have to put all that work into to get that card across. I think there will be game states and situations, however, where it is worth doing all of those things to get that through.
if you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Cedric Phillips. This is the StarCityGames.com Open Series, and we are in Cleveland, your hometown.
That's right.
The hometown of who else? What major sports teams are here? I believe
We've got the first place. I repeat, first place. And one more time, if you didn't hear me, first place, Cleveland Browns. So they're here. We have the now freshly eliminated Cleveland Indians from the
saw that
baseball
movie.
playoffs. Oh yes, you saw Major League, a great American flick, timeless. And of course the LeBron James-less Cleveland Cavaliers. But we all move on from bad things, so that's okay.
Starting out, Temple of Deceit faces off against Blood Crypt at a Thoughtseize, old school Thoughtseize.
Yep.
He's a legacy player, of course he's got that.
So you see the hand here of, and Losch, ever the nice gentleman, going to make things easy for you guys at home as well. Lightning Strike, Flames of the Firebrand, Chandra's Phoenix, Chandra Pyromaster, a Dreadbore, another Mountain, or Singleton Mountain, excuse me, and the Timuret, the Murder King. So he's a little bit light on lands, he's heavy on action, and he can operate off those two lands pretty well. Yeah. And the third and the fourth one are really going to open things up for him.
I mean, I would take any card here that doesn't have the word Chandra in it.
Yes.
Depends on your hand. The Flames of the Firebrand could be devastating, but the two mana removal spells are just cheap, or you could just get rid of the early clock.
I mean, the difficult thing here for Rill, I mean, you take a look at his deck list again, he's got these small creatures in Niv-Magus Elemental, Rakdos Cackler, the Akron Crusader, the Young Pyromancer, all cards that want to be in play, and you take a look at Losch's hand, he's like, well, I've got removal for those cards, I've got a Dreadbore, I've got a Lightning Strike, and that Flames of the Firebrand can actually 2-for-1 Rill out of the building too. So this is going to be a difficult Thoughtseize for him.
I've heard a lot of players in the aftermath of last week's Star City in Worcester talking about red-black, and not necessarily a red-black like Ian Losch's, but just the idea of kill all the creatures, have Rakdos Returns, have Chandra's Phoenix, have Chandra.
And that just being good enough here. Steam Vents coming in to play untapped for Rill, and now
there we
Cackler.
go.
All right,
Cackler's
so
good.
He's basically saying, all right, well, you get to use your first removal spell on this, and that's going to take up your turn. Another Dreadbore drawn. 4 of those in Losch's deck list. And Dreadbore, much like Hero's Downfall, a card that I really, really like now. I like the versatility of those cards.
I'm a big fan right now of Hero's Downfall. I've a crazy number of lists that have 4 Heroes Downfall, and Dreadbore, if you're playing red and black, is in some ways just a better Hero's Downfall. In some ways, instant is not to be laughed at.
Rill's going to take 2 from the Cackler, or excuse me, Losch is going to take 2 from the Cackler. Rill's going to get in with it. So we're going to tie the game up at 18 here. I think Rill's a little bit surprised that his creature didn't die. Now he's going to play Niv-Magus Elemental. And going to play Steam Vents Pass and say go. So Niv-Magus Elemental, as you see, Losch is going to take a look at it. It's an interesting card. We saw Jerry Thompson, Brad Nelson, and some other guys try to give that a go at Pro Tour Return to Ravnica in Seattle, my second hometown. And it was this card and this deck where it was absolutely bonkers against non-Jund decks. And the reason it was bad against Jund decks is because Jund decks have a lot of removal. Well, turns out Losch's deck has a lot of removal.
Yep. One of the neat tricks in Eric Rill's deck is the interaction of Niv-Magus Elemental with the Hidden Strings, because the recasting of the Hidden Strings from Cypher is something that the Niv-Magus Elemental can eat if it wants to.
Yep. So it looks like we're going to pull the trigger on Lightning Strike. And he says, all right, going to go this way towards Niv-Magus Elemental.
Oh, wow. That's bold.
Yeah, does Rill have a spell? He doesn't, so that thing's just going to die.
I don't know if I would have gone that direction. I might have gone the other direction and then dreadboard Eric Rills.
Yeah, a bit of a gamble, but it works out for him.
If you're wondering why we're talking about that as a gamble, there was a black and a blue mana open, so 1 mana open. If there was an instant, Eric Rill could have cast it and gobbled it up with his Niv Magus and had a 3/4.
And then it forces Losch to use. Forces Losch to use the Dreadbore on it. Here comes the Cackler yet again, of course. And then, he has to use 2 spells to take care of 1 card where he wouldn't have to otherwise.
Thinking about a temple? Nope. Island. Chandra.
Yeah, we thought this was going to happen.
Poke your face.
Not going to be the best Chandra, of course, because we know that Losch has at least 1 Dreadbore that he hasn't cast, and Rill knows that, but he doesn't know about the second Dreadbore in Losch's hand.
Ian Losch finally draws a 3rd land here.
Noting that it's a white borderland. It's horribly ugly. Adrian, how do you feel about white borderlands?
I am not a fan of them, though my favorite forest is a white bordered forest.
Okay.
However, it was recently printed in black border form, so I have to get some.
Okay, all right. So you're not a white border kind of guy.
Oh, no.
Right.
Not if I can help it. Young Pyromancer, and we see the Temple of... Watery Grave. That's the new Watery Grave.
Now, Rill knows about Flames of the Firebrand, so is the green light on? Is he just going to go for this, and it's just going to ruin him?
Zot.
2 to the Cackler, 1 to the Pyromancer would be the targets here for a little 2-for-1 action. Rill has a shock to make a 1/1, and that is it. So he does get 2-for-1 by the Flames. I honestly think that this is just a very difficult matchup for Rill because Losch has so much removal.
Yes. This is one of the reasons to play a deck like Ian is playing. If you imagine that your opponent is a red deck here, it's going to be much the same way in the sense that you'll just be going point and click, point and click, point and click, dead, 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 dead. And you hope that nothing sticks long enough to get damage in such that lightning strikes will finish you off. But odds are, you're going to be pretty good. You're going to be set up to kill everything.
And the thought process is, kind of like with Jund from the previous standard format, not the exact same, of course, because that deck had incredibly powerful cards and a way to stabilize yourself with Thragtusk, but kill everything and then kill them with something eventually is kind of the game plan here.
And one of the best eventually cards in here is Chandra herself.
Yep. That'll provide the card advantage you need. There is a chance that Chandra will be able to kill something with the +1. There are young Pyromancers flying around in this matchup, but for the most part, it's not being able to kill a lot of things. You see Niv Magus Elemental there from Rill, but I agree with you. Chandra is kind of that card that is on mop-up duty just because of the 0 ability, just to be able to draw some cards and find some more action.
I guess there's you asked earlier about how I felt about the Murder King. I like to call him Tiamat, the Murder King, but it's just because I'm an old D&D player. I also didn't even think about it. Chandra's Phoenix, in addition to the elementals from the young Pyromancer, also makes a solid thing to gobble up.
That's true. Yep. Gives you some fodder to throw those things away at. You don't mind sacrificing the Phoenix to get back the Murder King because you're probably going to have something to get back the Phoenix. So in a roundabout way, it does end up working out in your favor.
It's a lot of mana.
That's true. And you take a look at this deck here as far as mana is concerned. 22 of them. You got 2 mountains, 4 blood crypts, 4 swamps, 4 Rakdos Guildgates, 2 Mutavaults. That's 8 mountains, excuse me. And 1 Phoenix coming to the red zone. So here's a shock. He's going to gobble that up. It's going to be turned into a 3/4, something that we, again, mentioned that Niv Magus Elemental can do.
Okay, so... the Dreadbore.
Yeah. The question for Rill, and one card that we haven't even mentioned yet because he hasn't drawn it yet, is he has copies of Mysium Skin in his deck, 4 of them to be exact. So he does have ways to actually counter removal. He just hasn't drawn any of them yet.
Did it block? Okay, sorry, I missed. Never mind. So that was the attack. The shock there being gobbled, so the Phoenix dying in the block. Dreadbore finishing it off, and on the return, untap, we see the Phoenix there. 9 life for Eric Rill. Ian Losch at 12. 6 cards in hand. To me, if I was Eric Rill, he might as well have 60 cards in hand.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation because for Rill, you know that your opponent has all spells, and here is another one. There's a Molten Rebirth, so he's going to get at least 2 creatures here. Potential for that to come back to the grip, but you know that he has all spells in his hand, and you also know that if he starts drawing lands, you're in a world of hurt too. So you're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't position here. You're going to see the die roll. Rebirth's going to come back to the hand. 2 elemental tokens are going to come into play for Losch. He's going to happily pass the turn back.
So the single elemental now faces 2 opposing elementals and a Chandra's Phoenix. Eric does not look pleased about his board state.
Yeah, I wouldn't be thrilled either. It's a bad situation to be in.
And another land. 19 land in Eric Rill's deck.
Yep.
This is actually a little known trick for you at home. If you want to draw more land, cut it from your deck. That's how math works.
Is that the trick?
Yeah.
Well, Losch is going to draw a mountain. He's got 4 mana. I think this might be a Chandra here. Yeah. Going to establish the Pyromaster, take care of the elemental token, and deal 1 upstairs. And I guess get this back too. So pretty good Chandra this turn.
I think when they made the new Chandra, they were thinking to themselves, how can we make it really work with the Phoenix?
Yeah. I think I really, I feel like they wanted to have a red planeswalker that's on par with Jace, Architect of Thought, knowing that Jace was going to be really good post-rotation. Again, Jace wasn't great. It wasn't great when we had Thratus and all that stuff moving around for various different reasons. It's kind of funny how the Jace Architect of Thought wasn't very good, much in the same vein that Jace the Mind Sculptor wasn't very good when it got printed immediately, but once rotation happened, that's when that card started to dominate, and I think we're going to see kind of the same path for Jace Architect of Thought, and I think that they wanted to have a Planeswalker that was at least on par with it in the form of Chandra Pyromaster.
I mean, kudos.
Yeah, I agree. It's about time Red got a real Planeswalker.
Hey, Koth was real.
Yeah, Koth was real, but it was also in the same format as Jace. And so as a result, it didn't feel very real at all. Well, it would have been nice if Jace didn't go from 3 to 5 with Fate Seal. If it went from 3 to 4 with the Fate Seal, then Koth could actually come into play on Tap Mountain and kill it. But it would just go down to 1, and then they're like, okay, I will brainstorm now. And I will find an answer to Koth, and then find an answer to you.
Well, I mean, to be fair, though, let's say that you're playing when Jordan's playing. You can still be pretty darn good, but you've got to compete with Jordan. Maybe people don't remember your name.
That's ends up happening a lot. We'll remember Ian Losch's name though, because he is going to defeat Eric Rill 2-0. Black-Red Pyromancer taking care of Grixis Pyromancer, his innovative deck. So Rill, our Star City Games again Legacy Open champion, a few weeks back with Grixis Delver, is going to start this 9-round tournament off with a loss. Again, giving a new deck a try, and it's an interesting one, but I think the Black-Red Pyromancer deck is just a very, very bad matchup for him.
Yeah. Right there behind him, you can see Jeff Hoogland, who I know has a red-blue brew of his own.
Oh, Jeff Hoogland brought a brew?
Yeah.
Really?
We might be seeing him later today if he's having as much success as he thinks he might today. But right now, our first winner of the day is Ian Losch.